terms of the Browns and the Steelers.
Yeah.
Coming up Thursday is the big draft. The Steelers, both teams are interesting positions. The Steelers, their first two picks are at number 20 and number 51. The Browns' first pick is in the 50s. It's in the second round,
Yeah.
Based on the Deshaun Watson trade. Let's first look at the Browns. Where do you see, I guess, the major needs they would have going into the draft?
Yeah, I think the Browns, I think they got to take a look at several areas. I think they need to look at the defensive line. Their defensive line, they got quite a few guys back, but they need some depth. You can never have, especially the way they like to play it. They like to rotate defensive linemen in and out. You can never have enough defensive linemen. I still think they need another receiver or two. And then we'll have to see how the running back position, because their top two guys on their roster are, as far as the running back goes, are coming off knee injuries last year. Or I take that back. Obviously, Nick Chubb, and then one of the guys they signed is coming off knee surgery. So, so I'll be anxious to see how that plays out too. And hey, how about this? The Browns going back to the white face mask. I like that move. That takes us back to the cardiac kids years there, Chris.
Yeah. I think the Browns, I think some good things they did. You talk about depth. There's a lot of questions on, what's your number two receiver? And I think the guy they got for Judy from Denver in trade.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call him a number one, but I think he's going to be pretty good as a number two.
Yeah.
Last year, who's another pass rush? I mean, the Browns had a really good pass rush from a defensive line.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see him have another edge guy that can support Myles Garrett.
Right, sure.
Do you see that maybe a possibility?
Who knows? The thing about not having a first-round pick, and I don't see the Browns jumping up into the first round. I think that, I think they've got I believe they've given up another draft pick already. I think they have 6 picks because I think they have a couple in one of the later rounds. So those draft picks are really precious, especially when you don't have a number one draft pick. So I think they'll probably – I could see them wheel and deal. They tend to do that. A lot of times they'll trade a 7th-round pick toward the end of the draft for like 2 picks the following year. There's a real pattern there with them. But I do think, they really need to hit a home run with the number 54 pick, their first pick in the second round, and their 3rd-round pick. Those are the ones – those are guys – I really think your first 3-round guys in most years are guys who need to play their first year. Obviously, first rounders, they're going to start. Second and third rounders, if you do your homework right and you fill some needs in the second or third round and done a good job, those guys are going to be playing their first year in the NFL.
Here's the interesting thing. I'm not sure what the Browns would do draft-wise. I keep hearing things. I mean, they restructured their deal with Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb's coming back. There's still some questions on what Nick Chubb is coming back.
Right, because they had to do, 2 separate surgeries and fix, I believe it was 3 different areas of that knee. But I hear he's done really well in the offseason. I think he began some running just recently. But he's a super worker. And if anybody can get back on the playing field early, I would bet it's Nick Chubb. He's the consummate professional.
Well, and I kind of wonder, from what you said, I don't think we have doubt that Nick Chubb is going to play again. I think he'll play again. But is he going to have the same explosiveness? I mean, you saw the Browns pick up a couple of okay running backs. Definitely not the Nick Chubb type. But, in the back of my head, I'm kind of thinking, hey, here's some insurance in case Chubb doesn't come back or doesn't come back as the guy he once was. I don't know.
Right. And, that goes for the Browns. The Browns were so injured last year. They had a lot of guys that were lost for the season during the season with knee injuries. And a lot of times those are a year recovery, if not more. Well, I think I've said this before. A lot of those guys might not be ready at the start of the season. You'll have to see. Depth is going to be really important for them, especially early on when some of those guys who might be a number 2 are going to be a starter early on.
I think it's a huge year for Deshaun Watson. With all the TV money that's coming in, the contract that he signed isn't as outrageous now as it may have been viewed a couple years ago. But I think, I mean, the Browns were a playoff team last year, but who's their quarterback the last 6 games? It was Joe Flacco.
Right.
So Deshaun did some things last year. He wasn't terrible, but man, I think this is his year. He really needs to step up.
Oh, I totally agree. It has to happen this year. And I think the Browns fans were kind of disappointed that they didn't re-sign Flacco because but I think really at the end of the day, I think there was a little pressure there. If Watson isn't ready to go and Flacco has success early, what do you do? So that they don't have to put up with that. But I think a lot of the Browns fans are gonna show me what you can do this year, because I realize that Watson just had, through no fault of his own, just had a lot of injury setbacks, and has only played really not that many games in the 3 years he's been with the Browns.
I heard some speculation. I'm not sure if it was a little bit tongue in cheek or not, but I saw some speculation in Cleveland media saying, well, you get rid of Flacco and now, Watson doesn't have someone looking over his shoulder. I'm sorry, man. This is the NFL. You know what I mean? You've got to have quarterbacks that are ready to play and ready to play well.
Yep.
If the Browns got rid of Flacco or didn't bring him back just because they were afraid of what, is that going to freak Watson out or something?
No.
Sorry, you've got to have quarterbacks. I mean, it's a 17-game season.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the teams last year that missed quarterbacks for part of the year. I mean, I'm hoping in Jameis Winston, I think you could do worse than Jameis Winston, but I don't think with a straight face you can say Jameis Winston's better than Flacco right now.
And I think all the quarterbacks, if you'll notice, they have can run too, where Flacco really didn't fit that, where the run pass option is a possibility with the other 3 quarterbacks they have.
Well, let's talk about the Steelers. And just looking at what the Steelers did quarterback-wise, I know Pickett wasn't happy with competing for a starting job with Russell Wilson, so the Steelers traded him. But using that logic, the Steelers, they've got more of a running quarterback with Justin Fields now. So, that kind of goes on what the Steelers did too. So,
absolutely.
Steelers are an interesting path. Mike, I know you've praised their free agency. I think they've done well in free agency.
Oh, yeah.
They still have a couple big holes. They don't really have a number 2 receiver you look at.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, George Pickens. I mean, half the games you went out of saying, wow, George Pickens could be a great receiver. The other half the games you find yourself frustrating at. So I really think the Steelers need to add at least one really good receiver. Tackle. They got Broderick Jones last year, but the tackle on the other side is Dan Moore. They're not super thrilled with him. It'd be nice to upgrade there. They don't have a designated center on their team. There's some speculation that they can move a guy over, but that's not decided yet. And they really don't have the second cornerback. Levi Wallace looks like he's out of town, and they didn't bring Patrick Peterson back. So you got Joey Porter Jr., their second-round draft pick last year. It looks pretty good. Yeah. They don't have those yet. Now, that's why you have a draft. The Steelers have 4 draft picks in the first 3 rounds. They still have some money they can play with in free agency. So, again, they got the picks and everything. It's just you've got to pick guys that you can plug and play somewhere. And it's possible. It's a good draft for some of the spots the Steelers have holes on.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at tackle and receiver. It's just hopefully those guys are there when they pick. I mean, we're not going to know that till Thursday, I guess.
Well, they've got a good history in the draft, and I think they'll do well. I really do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I agree with you in terms of trading for the Browns. The Browns don't have that first-round pick when you have 6 picks the rest of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, if you trade up, you're going to have to give away those picks unless you trade picks in the future.
Yep.
The Steelers have some room to move. It'll be interesting. They had their press conference on Monday where they kind of talked about the preparations. Now, a lot of times these teams will just put out a lot of smoke, I guess is a better term than lies. The Steelers didn't sound like they wanted to trade down, but who knows? If you make the right move, you can make any move too. So,
yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if the Steelers traded up a little bit to get the guy they really wanted, or maybe make a trade down. But if they're smart, they can come out just looking pretty good. So
yeah, and I think the Steelers in the last year or so and I realize they've got a different person making their picks and stuff like that. I think they've wheeled and dealed a little bit more than
Yeah.
they did in the past. So I think anything's on the table come draft night.
It's interesting. They had 4 picks in the first 3 rounds last year. They had
Yeah.
2 second rounders, and so far, I mean, Broderick Jones has seemed to kind of sell himself into one of the tackle roles. He played right tackle last year, and their hope is they can get a tackle, they can move him to left tackle position. But Joey Porter Jr., he's been your number 1 quarterback last year.
Yeah.
Keanu Benton, I'm hearing a lot of good stuff. He made some noise his rookie year, but he's a defensive tackle who can really jump up. And then you've got Darnell Washington. He's 6'4", 280. He's a tight end. He didn't get that many receptions last year. But, Mike, it's interesting. When the Steelers were going good offensive line, if you remember, they had Heath Miller, which kind of was like a 6 offensive lineman. He was a good receiving tight end, but he could play that. The Steelers are hoping that, they used Washington a lot on blocking last year when their running game really stepped up. So they had a really good draft last year. If you compete it this year, they could be in really good shape. Who knows?
Oh, I tell you what, I think I said it before. I think they're going to be a Super Bowl team, especially if they address the few needs I think they do have in the draft. I think they're in that elite group of about 4 or 5 teams that could challenge for the Super Bowl. I really do. The AFC North is going to be awesome this year. I mean, it was really good last year. All 4 teams had winning records. I think it's going to be even better this year.
Yeah, and as someone who follows the Steelers, I'm very hopeful that what you said turns true. There's a couple of hurdles they still got to pass. The Bills are going to look a little different because they don't have Stephon Diggs anymore.
Right.
But the Bills are still a formidable team. I still look at teams like the Chiefs. If the Chiefs are right, they could get really strong.
Right.
Yeah, AFC, it's still a really good quarterback league. I kind of wish the Steelers would win the AFC. The NFC looks a little bit more approachable. The AFC can still be kind of tough. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and look at the Ravens. The Ravens lost, I think, was it like either 13 to 15 guys in free agency? So that's amazing turnover when you think about that. But they've had a good history too. I mean, they draft well. They always have those really tough defensive guys. I look at that would be the case again for them. But man, they've got to replace quite a few big name players.
I still think they're going to be good next year. I think when you talk about them losing 13 to 15 guys, that's really going to hurt their depth. So if their starters can stay healthy, great. Right. Yeah. But, here's the thing about a 17-game season. I'm a traditionalist. I wish it would have stayed 16.
Yeah.
The hard thing about a 17-game season, you see that with all quarterbacks going down and the other guys going down, it's hard to keep your team healthy. I think that's where that depth becomes really, really, really important.
Yep.
And if the salary cap, it's hard for any team to be really, really depth-filled. But, like you said, the Ravens lost all those guys. Maybe they're okay for the first couple of games, but when you start seeing injuries, that's where it could get tough.
Yeah, the second half of the year, usually it's a battle of attrition. A lot of times it's a lot of teams are limping to the finish line. The team that might be the healthiest might be doing the best.
Well, and I'll say this too. I picked this last year when I said, look, the Ravens aren't a great playoff team. They could fall apart. So even if they stay healthy, I think the Ravens are going to win a fair share of games next year.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not bought into them in the playoffs at all. Like I said, if they get hurt, they could struggle in the end of the year too. Yeah. Just look at the rest of the AFC North. The Bengals, Joe Burrow wasn't right last year. If Joe Burrow's right, I think the Bengals can still be a pretty good team. But is he healthy or not? I mean,
I would think, it's amazing. He's had his share of injuries the last 2 years, but if he has a healthy, he's really good. A very cerebral quarterback, and they've got a lot of talent. The Bengals have drafted well in recent years too. They've got a nice roster.
Yeah, they've upgraded a lot with their secondary.
Yeah,
there was some question about receivers. T. Higgins, they franchise tagged him. And I saw on an interview recently he's expected to play for the Bengals this year.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd, I know I think he's out there as a free agent. He's not getting a ton of interest from Riverside, so he might come back to Cincy. Yeah. And, you know, Jamar Chase, their receiver, is really
tremendous. Good. Yep.
Yeah, so
tremendous player.
It'll be interesting. So next week we will talk about the draft results.
Yeah.
I will use this opportunity to tease my Steelers podcast. I often share this on Mahoney Matters. We have plans to do a Thursday night podcast for the first time. We generally tape on Wednesdays, but we're going to try to do a recap. It'll be 11 to 12. We're not sure if we'll air it live, but we'll have it posted on the site by Thursday morning. So we'll have kind of a live look at how people ended up drafting. And although we're a Steelers show, we'll definitely look at from a Browns perspective and Bengals perspective too. So, and Ravens too, since Ravens are in the division.
Sure, so. Should be an exciting draft. I mean, the NFL is man. I tell you what, its popularity is just off the charts.